There's something slipping quietly out of the American wilderness, not with a roar or a cry, but with a whisper, a vanishing breath in the dense forests and swamplands of the South. It's not a myth, not a legend, but a very real creature that once moved like a ghost through the trees, commanding the terrain with confidence and power, yet now it teeters on the edge of memory. This is the story of the American panther, also known across regions as the cougar, mountain lion, puma, or catamount, one of the most widespread and now most elusive big cats in the Western Hemisphere. Once roaming freely from the Atlantic coast to the Rockies, from the southern swamps to the Canadian forests, the panther is now a phantom, spotted only rarely and surviving in painfully isolated pockets where its presence feels more like a whisper from the past than a living reality. It wasn't always this way just 2 centuries ago. These majestic cats roamed 30 states in the US, thriving in the dense canopies of the Appalachians, the murky bayous of Louisiana, and the rolling hills of the Carolinas. But now, in most of those places, the panther is gone, leaving behind only whispers, local legends, and the occasional blurry trail cam photo that's usually written off as a bobcat or an escaped exotic pet. To understand how we got here, how an apex predator virtually disappeared from the eastern United States, we have to travel back through time, to a moment when human expansion and fear collided with wild instinct. As settlers moved westward in the 18th and 19th centuries, they brought with them a deep suspicion of predators, especially the big cats that occasionally threatened livestock or simply stirred the imagination with their stealth and silence. Panthers, despite their shy and elusive nature, were quickly demonized as bloodthirsty threats to rural life, and soon bounties were placed on their heads by states eager to rid the land of any perceived danger to agriculture or settlements. Professional hunters, fueled by monetary incentives and social bravado, tracked these cats relentlessly, aided by dogs, traps, and eventually firearms that made close encounters fatal for the feline. Panther populations plummeted not from disease or lack of prey, but from a targeted campaign of eradication driven by misunderstanding, myth, and an overwhelming desire to control the wild. By the early 1900s, panthers were extinct from nearly every state east of the Mississippi River, leaving a vast ecological silence in their wake. Today, there is only one place in the eastern US where a remnant of this once vast population survives: the subtropical wilderness of South Florida. Here, deep in the tangled web of the Everglades and the swamps of Big Cypress, the Florida panther, a genetically distinct subspecies, clings to survival with fragile hope. With fewer than 230 individuals estimated to exist in the wild, their numbers are so low that a single bad season, too many car strikes, a disease outbreak, or loss of key habitat could send them spiraling into extinction. And make no mistake, even in Florida, a state that holds the title of their final refuge, panthers are constantly under siege from a combination of human encroachment, infrastructure, and environmental stress. One of the most insidious threats they face is habitat fragmentation, a problem that affects more than just wildlife. It reshapes entire ecosystems and jeopardizes biodiversity at every level. Panthers require enormous home ranges to survive, especially males, which can control territories of over 200 square miles, often overlapping with those of multiple females. But as Florida's population continues to boom, the forests and wetlands are increasingly carved up by highways, subdivisions, and sugarcane plantations, leaving isolated patches of green that no longer connect. This means panthers must travel farther to find mates, prey, or new territory, and those long, perilous journeys often bring them face to face with fast-moving traffic. Road mortality is now the leading cause of death for Florida panthers, with over 25 killed by vehicles each year, despite the presence of panther crossing signs and wildlife underpasses that, while helpful, are far from sufficient. Losing even a handful of individuals to roadkill annually is devastating when the total population hovers so precariously above 100 breeding adults. But if Florida represents the last refuge, then the rest of the Southeast tells a tale of absence, echoing with what once was and might never be again. In Texas, for example, panthers once prowled the forests of East Texas, thriving in dense pine thickets and river valleys rich with deer and cover. Yet today, they are almost entirely absent from the eastern part of the state, and the few remaining cougars that persist in the west are not legally protected in any significant way. Texas classifies mountain lions as non-game animals, meaning they can be hunted without a season, without limits, and with minimal oversight, a policy that effectively eliminates any chance of eastern recolonization. Across Louisiana's bayous, once teeming with wildlife and mystery, the panther has become a creature of folklore, known in local legend as the loup-garou or swamp ghost. Although occasional sightings make headlines, they are unconfirmed and likely represent misidentified bobcats or escaped exotic pets. No breeding population exists here anymore. Centuries of deforestation, wetland drainage, and oil exploration have transformed the panther's habitat into industrial zones and patchy farmland, making a return nearly impossible without massive restoration. In Georgia and Alabama, the tale is tragically similar. These states, once lush with hardwood forests and rich prey bases, have seen panthers completely extirpated, with wildlife agencies officially listing them as no longer present. Even though some reports surface now and then, they rarely hold up to scientific scrutiny, and any male panther dispersing northward from Florida is met not with opportunity, but a dead end. There are no females beyond southern Florida, no mating prospects, and no corridors wide or wild enough to allow a stable population to form. The Carolinas, home to the old eastern panther, have held tightly to their folklore, with rural communities claiming the presence of big cats in the shadows. But despite decades of rumors, the evidence remains elusive, and without sustained conservation investment, these lands will likely never again host a thriving panther population. But why can't we just bring them back? The answer isn't just biology, it's politics, policy, and public perception. In the 1990s, Florida's panther population was in severe decline, facing near extinction due to inbreeding that led to genetic defects like kinked tails, heart problems, and low fertility. In a bold and controversial move, wildlife biologists introduced 8 female cougars from Texas to inject new genetic material into the population. The results were striking. Within a decade, the panthers showed improved health, greater resilience, and a small but measurable population increase. It was a reminder that, given the right resources and a little genetic help, these cats can bounce back. But beyond Florida, few states are willing to consider such reintroduction programs, and even fewer are prepared to make the political sacrifices needed to support them. Top predators tend to evoke fear in human communities, even when the actual threat is statistically non-existent. There has never been a verified fatal attack on a human by a panther in the eastern US, and panthers are known to avoid people whenever possible. Still, ranchers fear livestock losses, suburban homeowners worry about pets, and politicians worry about public outcry. Without broad educational campaigns to dispel myths and build tolerance, reintroduction remains a long shot in most southeastern states. The panther's absence is not just a tragedy for the species, it's a loss for the ecosystems they once shaped and balanced. As apex predators, panthers play a vital role in regulating deer populations and maintaining the health of forest understories, which in turn affect everything from songbirds to soil health. Without them, prey species can grow unchecked, leading to overgrazed vegetation, eroded landscapes, and collapsing food webs. In essence, the loss of the panther creates a cascade of ecological imbalance, one that reverberates through every level of the environment. But perhaps what's most haunting is the silence deep forests, where once a whisper of movement meant a big cat was near, now empty of their watchful eyes. Our landscapes are quieter now, not just because of human noise, but because a key voice in the chorus of the wild has been muted. We have the science to bring them back. We have the models, the success stories, and even the land in some areas. What we lack is the will. The question now is not whether panthers can return to these states, but whether we will allow them to. Will we reimagine our relationship with wilderness and accept the presence of something that cannot be tamed? Or will we cling to the illusion of control until the last paw print fades from the forest floor? The future of the panther rests not in its ability to adapt. It has done so for millions of years. It rests in our capacity to coexist. It will be us,